Welcome to this explainer. Look, if you're an ag professional or a progressive farmer, you already know that stepping into a field of gourds and seeing young fruits turning yellow and dropping is just a gut-wrenching feeling. It's literally money falling to the ground. Today, we're going to treat this like a medical mystery. We're going to systematically investigate the physiological, environmental, and biological culprits behind fruit drop, giving you the exact tools you need to correctly diagnose the issue.
Okay, let's dive into this and look at our agenda. We'll start with diagnosing fruit drop, then check out the pollination factor, moisture and nutrient stress, and pests and pathogens. After that, we'll wrap up with a field diagnosis guide and some best management practices. All right, Section 1, diagnosing fruit drop. So why exactly are your gourds turning yellow and dropping prematurely? We know yield loss is incredibly frustrating, right? And the knee-jerk reaction for a lot of growers is just to grab a chemical spray. But here's the critical economic and ecological danger, and this is absolutely crucial. Spraying expensive fungicides won't do a single thing if your problem isn't actually a disease. Treating the wrong cause, it just drains your wallet and harms the environment. We have to figure out the why first.
Moving on to Section 2, the pollination factor.
To crack this case, we really need to look at the unique biology of cucurbits. These plants are monoecious. Basically, that means they produce completely separate male and female flowers. The male flowers, they've got this sticky pollen, and the female flowers have a receptive stigma with a tiny ovary at the base that honestly looks like a miniature fruit. Now, because that pollen is sticky, the wind is totally useless here. These plants are 100% reliant on external helpers, like bees, to move that pollen around.
Now, what's really interesting here is how incredibly narrow the window for successful pollination actually is. Let's take the bottle gourd, for example. Its flowers open up between 5:30 and 7 in the morning. But get this, the female stigma is optimally receptive only between 6 and 9 a.m. Talk about a tight schedule. So if you get heavy morning rain, a sudden drop in temperature, or maybe a pesticide wiped out your local bees, well, they aren't going to be flying during that critical 3-hour window. And just like that, pollination totally fails.
So, what exactly happens to that tiny female ovary if the bees don't show up? Well, the plant operates on this really strict internal logic. If successful fertilization hasn't happened, the plant knows that particular fruit is never going to produce viable seeds. So to save energy and resources, it literally just cuts off the carbohydrate and nutrient supply to that specific fruit. As a result, the young, unfertilized fruit turns yellow, shrivels up, and aborts, just drops right off the vine. If you were to cut one of these dropped fruits open, you'd see the seeds are completely missing or barely developed at all.
Next up, Section 3, moisture and nutrient stress.
Now, even if a fruit gets perfectly pollinated, it can still drop if the plant goes through severe abiotic stress, like a drought or high salinity. When a plant gets water stressed, it really struggles to move essential nutrients around, and this is where potassium steps in as the absolute hero of our story. Potassium is vital for a cellular process called osmoregulation regulation. Basically, that maintains cell turgor and ionic balance. It acts like an enzymatic activator, helping the plant resist stress, build up resilience, and push through to develop quality fruit, even when the environment isn't exactly cooperating. But, it's not just about a lack of water. Too much water is equally deadly. Farmers often have a tendency to over-irrigate, and that leads to waterlogging. That literally drowns the root system, choking off oxygen and stopping nutrient uptake. This kind of stress can cause even mature fruits, ones with fully developed seeds, to turn yellow and shrivel. So to combat this, it's highly recommended to use surface irrigation techniques, like raised beds or the ridge and furrow method. These structures give you excellent drainage, and honestly, they vastly improve your irrigation water use efficiency.
Okay, Section 4, pests and pathogens.
Let's talk external threats. The bitter gourd fruit fly is a notoriously bad pest. But notice the distinction we're making here. Unlike a pollination failure, which affects those tiny young fruits, the fruit fly actually targets developing and mature gourds. The female punctures the skin to lay her eggs. Once those hatch, the larvae just feed inside, causing massive physical damage and internal rotting. And that, of course, forces the fruit to drop.
Insects aren't the only external attackers, though. Enter our major fungal culprit, gummy stum blight. This one is highly destructive, especially in warm, wet conditions. Take a look at these initial symptoms on the leaves. They show up as these circular, dark brown to tan spots, usually starting right at the edges or margins of the leaf. And this brilliantly illustrates the absolute hallmark of gummy stem blight, which you'll find on the stems. If you inspect the main vines right down near the soil line, you'll spot these distinct water-soaked lesions. As the infection gets worse, they actually split open and ooze this gummy, amber-colored plant sap. It's pretty gross, but it's a clear sign. That severe stem damage disrupts the plant's whole vascular system, killing the vine, which naturally means any attached fruit is going to fail.
If that pathogen makes it all the way to the fruits, the damage is sadly irreversible. You can see the advanced symptoms on this mature bottle gourd here: dark brown, necrotic discoloration, and serious rotting right on the surface. It totally ruins marketability and causes massive yield losses. I mean, we're talking sometimes up to 80% loss if the field hasn't had proper crop rotation.
Moving right along to Section 5, our Field Diagnosis Guide. So when you're out there and you see a yellowing, dropped fruit, just walk through this simple decision tree. First step, look at the size. Is it a very young, newly formed fruit? If yes, go to step 2, cut the thing open. Are the seeds absent or just barely developed? If the answer is yes again, you can immediately rule out disease. Your primary diagnosis here is poor pollination. Going out and applying a fungicide for this would literally just be throwing money away, because your real issue is simply a lack of bee activity. Synthesizing all this evidence gives you a real master diagnostic guide. You really have to look at the whole picture. If the fruit is young and seedless, it's physiological, so check on your pollinators. If you're seeing puncture holes and larvae, well, you've got an insect problem. But if you see those dark leaf margins and the oozing stems we talked about, then you've got a fungal disease. And that is exactly when you need to act fast with crop rotation and justified fungicide use.
Finally, Section 6, Best Management Practices.
Ultimately, our goal here is to move completely away from those calendar-based chemical sprays. Instead, we want to focus proactively on integrated pest management, or IPM. First off, conserve your local bee populations. Just avoid spraying pesticides in the morning when those flowers are open. Implement ridge and furrow irrigation to stop the waterlogging that stresses your plants and invites fungus. Practice strict crop rotation, and make sure you deep turn your field debris to break the disease cycle for pathogens like gummy stem blight. You might also want to try spot applications of biocontrols like trichoderma right at planting to naturally defend that root zone.
So what does this all mean for you? Ultimately, good crop management is really about asking the right questions before you take action. The next time you step into your field and you spot a yellowed, dropped gourd, just pause, do a little investigating. Are you going to just reflexively treat the symptom with a random spray? Or will you use the evidence to diagnose the root cause, protecting your yields, saving your hard-earned money, and preserving your local ecosystem at the same time? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and we will see you out in the field.